we've been waiting for a whole month for this, and it's very emotional.
Escaping a war zone, the very first Canadians are able to leave Gaza.
Tonight, trapped for a month, the relief and the remaining fear as hundreds more wait to get out. Good evening. We begin with a major development in the war. Israel says its soldiers have entered Gaza City and are now fighting Hamas in the depths of the urban center.
The new phase of the war comes as the first group of Canadians has been allowed to leave the Gaza Strip. Nearly 60 are confirmed to have crossed into Egypt today. CTV's Kevin Gallagher reports.
With the humanitarian crisis in Gaza growing worse by the day, the first group of Canadians crossed the Rafah border into Egypt.
They were met by Canadian diplomats on the Egyptian side of the border. I would like to thank my Egyptian, Israeli, and Qatari counterparts for making this operation successful.
Up to 80 Canadians are on the approved list today, though Global Affairs says only 59 citizens, permanent residents, and family members have crossed into Egypt, including Noor al-Bataniji's father.
He had to see things that nobody should ever see or experience.
At least 400 Canadians are still in the besieged territory as concerned families grow increasingly frustrated.
This has been crazy. The transparency hasn't been good. Our government has failed us.
The journey to the southern border is a major challenge as most make their way on foot. The Israeli military has much of northern Gaza encircled as it targets Hamas and its top commanders. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continues to reject calls for a ceasefire without the release of hostages, even hinting Israel may occupy Gaza indefinitely once Hamas is defeated.
We've seen what happens when we don't have it. When we don't have that security responsibility, what we have is the eruption of Hamas terror on a scale that we couldn't imagine.
The Canadians who crossed into Egypt today were put on shuttles and taken to Cairo, where embassy staff provided food, accommodation, and medical treatment, though they only have 72 hours before they're required to leave the country at their own expense. Kevin Gallagher, CTV News, Ottawa.
And while there's relief as the first Canadians leave Gaza, there's much anxiety and frustration for those still waiting. CTV's Raheem Ladani joins us with the stories of loved ones here. Raheem.
Nathan, we still don't know how long it will take for every Canadian to be evacuated out of Gaza, and that is a major point of pain for Palestinian Canadians here in the GTA who feel that the Canadian government is not acting with a sense of urgency. Looking through photos of her husband Ihab, who's stuck in the northern part of Gaza, Reina Bader and her 3 children are still living in agony.
We're anxious most of the time. We're not sure that tomorrow or the next call would Ihab pick up the phone or no.
Ihab is a Canadian citizen and pediatrician, but the family says the Canadian government has been less than helpful in getting him to the Rafah border crossing.
When I tell them that we need a safe passage to the south, they say risk it on your own. Unbelievable.
Global Affairs Canada confirms a group of 20 to 25 Canadians have crossed into Egypt and up to 80 people are eligible to leave. Mohanad Sharab's wife and 2 kids are some of those lucky enough to be on that list.
They are on the bus. They're finally going to Cairo, and it's been a nightmare.
But that nightmare continues for hundreds of other Palestinian Canadians who are still in Gaza. Inside Palestine House in Mississauga, there remains anguish and anger at the Canadian government.
Our grievances are further compounded by the repeated requests for paperwork, inconsistent evacuation lists, and unclear communication, leaving many without confirmed dates for evacuation.
Suleiman says he calls Global Affairs Canada multiple times a day to try and get his 16-year-old son on the list to leave Gaza, but has been unsuccessful.
They don't care about the Canadian, like the Canadian in Gaza or in Palestine. They was care like the first week they get the Canadian in Israel right away, but the Palestinian no.
Mounting frustration that Canadians are not being helped to safety fast enough. This group of Palestinians is also calling on the Minister of Immigration to fast-track visas for the family members of Canadians who are trying to escape Gaza. Reporting live, I'm Raheem Ladani. Michelle, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Raheem. And we have much more online. You can track the latest developments in the Israel-Hamas war on our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
The Peel region, where police are providing insight into a disturbing investigation. Gangsters recruiting at-risk kids to commit violent crimes.
Armed robberies, carjackings, and even attempted murders. There have been more than 100 charges. The number of incidents rising at alarming rates. CTV's Janice Goulding joins us live with the story. Janice.
Hi, Michelle. Yes, Peel Regional Police launched Project Sterling earlier this year following a massive spike in drugstore robberies and carjackings, which they say were often violent.
They have the gun. They just like put a gun on my head.
You thought you could die?
Yeah.
This Brampton pharmacist describes the moment he was robbed at gunpoint.
It's scary, right? So I was just like shaking. Then I thought, like, don't hurt me. Whatever you want, take it.
Unfortunately, he isn't alone. Peel Regional Police say in 2022 there were 135 armed pharmacy robberies in Peel. That's a 400% increase from the year before. And in 2023, there was a 67% increase in carjackings. Huge spikes which prompted investigators to launch Project Sterling.
This project has led to the disruption and dismantling of a very well-known street gang that originated out of Brampton and was targeting our community.
Peel police say that this gang had been operating since 2019, actively recruiting at-risk youth to conduct criminal acts, which included pharmacy robberies and carjackings.
A total of 103 criminal code charges have been laid, including robbery, robbery with a firearm, unauthorized possession of a firearm, possession of a loaded prohibited weapon, assault, flight for police, and attempt murder.
8 adults were arrested along with 12 young offenders. Beyond that, 6 vehicles were recovered, along with 2 firearms with ammunition and 6 imitation firearms.
What this really shows, and frankly sends a message to organized crime, there is consequences and there is accountability. What we've seen on Canadian streets cannot be tolerated.
Police say they also solved more than 20 violent robberies, although this pharmacist was not among them.
They take drugs and they take the cash, then they left right away.
Still, police say since the start of Project Sterling, pharmacy robberies are down by 62% compared to the year before, while carjackings are down by 11%. Police say one of the vehicles that was violently carjacked last year in Brampton was later used in a drive-by shooting at Toronto's Weston Collegiate last February. 2 17-year-olds were charged with attempted murder in that case. Reporting live, I'm Janice Goulding. Now back to Nathan.
All right, thank you, Janice. Also tonight, Mayor Olivia Chow catches a boat ride on a mission to make a Waterfront East LRT a reality. The plans to bring accessibility to this fast-growing slice of the city.
Plenty of cloud limiting our daylight today. This is a live look outside this hour. No rain right now, but the temperature has sure been falling all day. And tomorrow, we could be in for a bit of wet snow. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. Say it ain't so, Lindsay.
I know, Michelle, and it's not just snow. Some areas could also get freezing rain and ice pellets. This is for tomorrow afternoon and early evening. We'll talk about this coming up. First, a nod to the temperature. It is 4 degrees. It's true. That temperature has been falling all day long. We started off at about 13 early this morning, and yeah, that temperature has gone down ever since. Winds coming out of the northwest today, so you likely felt the difference. Still pretty breezy out there. The evening is looking clear, calm, quiet, but cool. These temperatures are just going to have to be adjusted there. But what I do want to show you here is that we have a freezing rain warning in place for the areas in blue. The areas that you see here in yellow, that's a special weather statement. So this is where freezing rain is expected and where it's possible. But yes, wet snow is a possibility too. We'll detail the timing of it all coming up. For now, Michelle, I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, when it comes to development in Toronto, the eastern waterfront is bracing for a boom.
But getting people to and from the area is proving problematic. It's why the city is looking at expanding rail service along Queens Quay. Today, the mayor took a boat tour to check it out for herself, and CTV's Mike Walker joined her. Mike.
Well, Nathan and Michelle, the purpose of this boat tour was to see the development already underway. And with more intensification, Mayor Olivia Chow wants to accelerate the design phase for the Waterfront East LRT, which will be going before council tomorrow. As development ramps up along the waterfront, so too is the desire to build the Waterfront East LRT.
Just on Queens Quay, south of the Gardiner, there's 20,000 more residents and 20,000 more jobs on Queens Quay since 2010.
The mayor is setting sail this morning on a tour with business leaders and developers who are voicing their support for the nearly 4-kilometer LRT line that would run from Union Station east along Queens Quay to Villiers Island. Work on a route Olivia Chow intends to expedite.
Because you can't have thousands and thousands of residents coming in and not able to service the area. Congestion is already bad enough.
Council is set to vote on a motion to spend $63 million to advance design work for 60% of the line, minus the tunnel portion connecting to Union Station.
What is so important is that all of those people, those communities that we're building here are able to access this neighborhood. And the vote tomorrow is a critical step in allowing us to move forward with the timeliness and the urgency that requires.
More than 100,000 people are expected to live in the area over the next decade, an area the Board of Trade has recently relocated to.
For it to really work, it's going to need the LRT. It's going to need accessibility. We are finding access a bit difficult.
The city projects ridership to be 50,000 daily trips. George Brown has been expanding its waterfront campus. The college's president says the light rail line is critical.
We have 9,000 students and employees that come down here every day for learning, for training, for being able to be prepared for the job market. To be able to do that, we have to make sure that we're able to get our students and employees down here.
The budget for the line is now pegged at nearly $2.6 billion, but there are still no funds to get shovels in the ground.
We need the federal and the provincial government to give us a new deal so that they can then come in and help us build the waterfront LRT.
Now, to cover the costs of this design phase, the city will be relying on development charges and the city building fund. Now, depending on government approvals and funding from additional levels of government, the target completion date for this project right now is about a decade away. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Still ahead, driving home a life-saving message by highlighting the victims. Mad Toronto joins forces with the TTC to try and prevent drinking and driving this holiday season.
We're learning more tonight about a woman killed in a weekend murder in Whitby.
Her name was Latanya Anderson, and a man has been charged in her death. As CTV's Allison Hurst reports, investigators say she was the victim of intimate partner violence.
Police swarm a home in Whitby, where inside 34-year-old Latanya Anderson was found dead.
They did attempt some life-saving measures. However, they were not successful, and she was pronounced deceased on the scene.
Officers went to the home after a man came to the police station.
He had a conversation with officers. From that conversation, it stemmed officers to go to a home address on Cresman Court in Whitby.
That was around 9 p.m. on Saturday night. Sergeant Joanne Bordelis says she's not aware of any weapons being found at the home.
They were a married couple. His name's Troy Moulton. He's currently in police custody. He's facing charges of second-degree murder.
Scarborough Health Network confirms Anderson worked as a patient support representative and was a beloved member of the team at Centenary Hospital. In a statement, a spokesperson says her colleagues will remember her as a vivacious and ambitious woman who was dedicated to serving and supporting our patients with compassion and professionalism. Latanya never hesitated to help her team, including her willingness to jump in and work as a personal support worker during the pandemic. This tragic loss will be felt across our organization and community. This latest homicide happened at the beginning of November, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
While this is heartbreaking to hear, one of the things that we do know is that this is not a surprise. We know that a woman is killed every 48 hours here in Canada, and we know that a woman is killed by her partner once a week here in Canada.
Durham police say there are other places people can contact if they don't want to report it to police. Victim Services Toronto gets anywhere from 17,000 to 20,000 calls a year. And Jasminder Seacon says of those, more than 70% are intimate partner violence.
We are not the police. You can reach out to Victim Services Toronto and get supports and resources without ever having to report.
The investigation is ongoing and Moulton remains in custody. A GoFundMe page has been set up for Anderson's family. Allison Hurst, CTV News.
And Toronto police have identified the man killed in a deadly shooting in Scarborough. Investigators say 24-year-old Mark Riley was found with gunshot wounds in an apartment building and was pronounced dead on scene. It happened yesterday afternoon, just after 12:30, near Kingston and Galloway Roads. Police also located a second man with gunshot wounds in the apartment building. He was taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. There's no word on any arrests.
A 26-year-old man has died following a crash on the 404 near Finch. Toronto Fire Service says they were called to the scene just after 8 last night. The driver had struck an overpass, and there were reports of someone trapped in the vehicle. The victim was removed and rushed to hospital, but was pronounced dead a short time later.
3 people were injured in a crash in Brampton. 2 vehicles involved here. Paramedics say 1 man and 1 woman suffered critical injuries. A 3rd person was taken to hospital in stable condition. The cause of the crash is under investigation.
It's a sobering statistic. In the last 5 years, 303 people in Ontario have been killed in drug or alcohol-related crashes.
It's why, with the holiday season approaching, Mad Canada and the TTC are making a personal plea to the public to help save lives. CTV's Beth McDonnell explains.
30 years have passed since Paul Stevens was killed in an alcohol-related crash. The pain from his loss does not end.
It's just ongoing in terms of realizing what Paul missed. I have 2 grandchildren, and they live close by, and he loved kids, and he would have been an absolutely fabulous grandfather.
Wife Marlene was asleep at home when at 56 her husband was struck on the highway. Police showed up at her door with the traumatic news. Stevens' death is part of Mothers Against Drunk Driving Canada's 36th annual Red Ribbon campaign, honoring people who lost their lives on TTC buses.
3 years ago, just last week.
Bob Carew's son, Robert, is also part of the initiative. A married father of 4, Carew says the 43-year-old was killed instantly in Muskoka, out for a run.
This didn't have to happen. It wasn't an accident. The driver that morning made a decision to get in that car.
The campaign features 11 victims. Their faces are on 27 buses that will be traveling around the city. Through sharing their deaths, the goal is to prevent further crashes. This holiday season, people are encouraged to plan ahead, take transit, and drive sober.
As of October the 23rd, the Toronto Police Service has received more than 6,000 calls for service for impaired driving, which represents a 5% increase over 2022.
Anyone who sees a suspected impaired driver is urged to call 911. Already in Ontario this year, 39 people have been killed in drug and alcohol-related crashes. And the Stevens and Carew families don't want anyone else to experience their pain. Beth McDonnell, CTV News.
Ontario Provincial Police have issued an unusual warning after a driver made an ill-advised move to fix a broken windshield. Police in Prescott stopped this car yesterday. They say the driver used plastic wrap as a replacement to their missing front windshield. No surprise, the fix doesn't seem to have worked, with obvious rips and tears. The driver was charged with operating an unsafe vehicle.
Closing arguments have begun in the sex assault trial of Peter Nygaard.
Once the head of an international women's clothing company, he's accused of using his position to sexually assault women and girls. And we want to warn you, details of the case are graphic. CTV's John Musselman has the latest from the trial.
Defense lawyer Brian Greenspan told the jury in his closing remarks that they are the sole judges of the facts in this case. Greenspan told the jury the defense claims the Crown's case is based on contradictions and innuendo. There are countless inaccuracies and a revisionist history of events has been advanced. Greenspan added that memories have also faded. And if you believe Peter Nygaard, your task is over and you must acquit. If you don't know who to believe, that means you have reasonable doubt, and you must find Peter Nygaard not guilty. Nygaard is sitting at the front of the courtroom at the defense counsel table. During the closing arguments from both the Crown and the defense, he shifted his chair towards the jury members, and he's maintained eye contact throughout the whole process. In her closing submissions, Crown Prosecutor Anna Serban told the jury the accounts from the complainants all describe a similar pattern by Mr. Nygaard. She also went on to say that his evidence was contradictory. He was evasive. Peter Nygaard changed his evidence on what he said in a police interview and what he said in court. His memory was unreliable. I suggest the more troubling aspect of Nygaard's memory is that it is selective. His evidence is not credible. If you believe the women, you should have no difficulty finding Peter Nygaard guilty of sexual assault. Nygaard has pleaded not guilty to all 5 counts of sexual assault and 1 count of forcible confinement. The 5 complainants allege they were attacked inside Nygaard's fashion headquarters on Niagara Street in the 1980s up to 2005. The jury will begin deliberations tomorrow following the judge's final instructions. John Musselman, CTV News.
In Quebec, a 19-year-old man has been charged in the death of a child. Police were called to a home north of Montreal last evening regarding a young child suffering from serious injuries. Court documents say the suspect lived at the home. Officials have not said what link existed between the victim and the man. Yassine Mehanoui faces a number of charges.
The Federal Environment Commissioner says there's an urgent need for Canada to step up in the fight against climate change.
Canada is the only G7 country that has not achieved any emission reduction since 1990. Taking meaningful action to reduce emissions is the most impactful thing Canada can do to play its part in addressing the global climate emergency. Solutions exist, such as renewing the government's fleet with zero-emission vehicles, or implementing effective fiscal and regulatory measures to reduce greenhouse gases. The problem is that available solutions are being implemented much too slowly.
In his fall audit, Jerry DeMarco says Ottawa's emissions reduction plan is coming up several million tons short of hitting the next target in 2030. And fewer than half of the more than 80 policies and programs in the plan have a timetable for implementation. Only 4 have a specific target for cutting emissions.
A major political story tonight in Portugal, where the Prime Minister has resigned.
Apresentei a minha demissão a Sua Excelência, o Sr. Presidente da República.
Antonio Costa announced his decision in a televised statement. An investigation is underway into alleged corruption in the government's handling of lithium mining and hydrogen projects. Costa says his conscience is clear, but insists the functions of his role are not compatible with any suspicion about his integrity. It is now up to the president to decide whether to allow Costa's party to form a new government or to dissolve parliament and call an election.
In the UK, the first King's speech in more than 70 years was delivered today.
My government will continue to take action to bring down inflation, to ease the cost of living for families, and help businesses fund new jobs and investment.
The monarch read a speech written by the government in the House of Lords. It set out the Conservatives' legislative agenda for the new session of Parliament. The day began with the King traveling from Buckingham Palace to Westminster in a horse-drawn carriage. It's almost certainly his last King's speech before a national election.
Here at home, a statue honoring the King's late mother was unveiled at Queen's Park today. The bronze work of Queen Elizabeth II represents as she appeared when she spoke to the Canadian Parliament in 1977. This project has been years in the making, first commissioned in 2016 after receiving the Queen's approval. The Ontario government says the statue will honor her long service to Canada and the province.
She was a leader, a role model, and a source of comfort and stability during very difficult times. She served as a patron of more than 600 charities and organizations around the world, including 36 right here in Canada.
The new statue is located on the south side of the building in front of the Visitor Welcome Centre.
As Remembrance Day approaches, Canada Post is honoring one of the many Canadian heroes. A stamp was unveiled showing a photo of Mona Parsons. She was jailed by the Nazis for helping Allied air crews escape the Netherlands during the Second World War. The Nova Scotia native married a Dutch man and moved there. She joined the resistance when the country was invaded, and she was imprisoned for 3 years before escaping in 1945. The stamp also shows an image of the North Nova Scotia Highlanders. Parsons met them after escaping, walking 125 kilometers to the Dutch border.
There is a lot of excitement tonight in the world of astronomy. These are the first images from the European Space Agency's new Euclid telescope. It captured a group shot of 1,000 galaxies in a cluster 240 million light years away, all against a backdrop of more than 100,000 galaxies further in the background. They have been observed before, but the ESA says these are sharper images.
From those sparkling images to something twinkling here on Earth, and it's worth a fortune. This gem sold for over $60.5 million in Geneva today. It's the largest flawless, fancy, vivid blue diamond ever put up for auction, known as Blue Royal. The 17.6 carat diamond is among the rarest ever to be found. It's unique because of its deep, rich blue color and unmodified pear shape.
Coming up, lest we forget, the Leafs, past and present, pay a visit to local veterans, hockey heroes, sharing touching moments with heroes of war.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, we all know how expensive new vehicles have become. Now a new survey claims car dealers are price gouging. It says some are forcing customers to buy expensive add-ons and options. If they don't, they can't buy the car. I'll have the details just ahead.
Going to be a chilly start to the day tomorrow, -3 degrees, wind chill -5, but condition-wise, we'll be quiet. We might even enjoy some sun. It's the afternoon where we get this wintry mix before a changeover to rain in the evening. Still enough to make for some slippery surfaces. We'll talk all about it coming up in your forecast. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
The pandemic caused many problems with supply chain issues, and that includes the production and sale of new vehicles.
Many buyers have been forced to wait months for new cars to arrive, and when they do, you may also have to pay more than you plan to. Pat Foran has the story on Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Michelle and Nathan. Whenever you buy a vehicle, you'll be pitched warranties, rust protection, and other options, things you can usually accept or decline. But a new survey finds some car dealers are forcing customers to buy add-ons or they don't get the car. During the pandemic, many dealer lots had plenty of empty spaces due to factory shutdowns and chip shortages. That drove up demand and prices for both new and used vehicles. Last year, Aris Van Ham was told if he wanted a new car, he'd have to pay thousands of dollars extra for options he didn't want.
I feel it's price gouging at its worst. You used to be able to go into a dealership and negotiate a price down, not up.
A new survey by Car Help Canada found it's a practice still going on. 37% of new car buyers said they were forced to pay a markup over the MSRP, and that 85% of the profit markups range from $1,000 to over $10,000.
Many dealerships are really price gouging consumers, charging them excessive fees or forcing them to pay for add-on products that they don't necessarily need.
Some of the options customers were forced to buy included an extended warranty, paint protection, tinted windows, key fob insurance, rust protection, tire and rim protection, and VIN etching. Many dealers told customers they had to pay for the add-ons or they couldn't buy the car.
The dealership hides these charges and hides these products until the last moment when the contract is put in front of the consumer, and only then are they presented with it.
The practice is known as tide selling, and while it's not illegal, it could be considered unethical. OMVIC, which oversees Ontario car dealers, told CTV News it's had numerous complaints to OMVIC from car buyers who feel compelled to pay for unwanted products. Car buyers do have the right to walk away from these types of sales. Car Help Canada recommends shopping around to find a dealer who won't force you to purchase options you don't want. And while it's currently harder to negotiate, you can still try. And there is no cooling off period when buying a car in Ontario, so don't sign a contract unless you're sure you want it. However, if a dealer raises the price after the contract is signed, the buyer can cancel without penalty and get their deposit back. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
You know, it just seems like the past few weeks we've been above seasonal, really comfortable temperatures, but today, the change has begun.
I think now's about the time that all those who haven't put their winter tires on are going to be feeling that internal pressure to do so. It's always the first little dusting of snow that really, fuels that fury.
Yeah, I think my forecast might encourage you to book that appointment if you haven't done so already. And it is interesting about the temperatures, Nathan. Overnight last night, we were still in the double digits, in the teens in many areas. Over about a 24-hour period, we're dropping from double digits to below freezing. And that's going to contribute to the wintry mix we could be in for tomorrow. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. Now, this low pressure system is going to be higher impact for areas outside of the GTA and most certainly outside of Toronto. So the area in blue there that you see extending from Kincardine over toward the Orangeville area in through Shelburne, Barrie, up north toward Midland, Penetanguishene. This is a freezing rain warning. This is where freezing rain is expected tomorrow, maybe 2 to 5 millimeters of it by the time all is said and done. And then we have this special weather statement extending from Stratford over toward Halton Hills, including Caledon, Newmarket, Uxbridge, and into Peterborough. This is where a trace to 2 millimeters of freezing rain is going to be a possibility, and that's the key word, possible versus expected. We are not included here in the city of Toronto, but I too think that we could get a little bit of a wintry mix, including some wet snow. So this area of low pressure, it's still developing. Tomorrow morning, we start off not bad. It's in through the afternoon that the precipitation slides on by, and eventually there will be a quick changeover to rain. But look at what could happen before that. Again, the blue, that's a little bit of wet snow. Areas in pink, you can see it's a pretty widespread area. That would likely be freezing rain or maybe some ice pellets. The ground is still relatively warm right now, so not expecting a lot in the way of ice accretion, but it doesn't take much for surfaces to become slippery, as we know. There's the evening. We've switched over to rain, and we're looking at a decent amount of rain through the overnight hours, maybe 15 to 20 millimeters. Early risers might get some wet weather on Thursday morning, but other than that, it's cloudy, followed by some clearing in the afternoon. Temperature-wise, yeah, it's much colder in northern Ontario compared to the south. 9 degrees still in the Windsor area. -3 is our overnight forecast low for tonight, and only 2 degrees for tomorrow. That is it. Seasonal average is 9. There is the 7-day forecast, including a bit of a cool Remembrance Day, but at least we will return to some sun by Friday. That's your weather for now. Nathan, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. After the break, changing their names in the name of progress. The list of dozens of birds with monikers deemed offensive and the plan to rename all of them. That's coming up.
What's in a name? Turns out if you're a bird lover, a lot.
That's why the American Ornithological Society is looking at renaming dozens of birds. It says in this day and age, don't fly. CTV's Sean Leithong explains.
Their look is the same, but these birds could soon be getting new names.
What the American Ornithological Society has decided to do is to take any bird that was named after a person, a historical person, and change their names to something that is more descriptive.
Mark Peck leads the ornithological department at the Royal Ontario Museum. He says as many as 60 to 80 bird species in North America could be up for a name change. One, to help be more descriptive, and
a lot of birds have been named historically after men who were probably good ornithologists, but not really good individuals in today's world. So many of them were slave owners or racists.
One example, this was once called McCowan's Longspur, named for John P. McCowan, amateur nature enthusiast and Confederate Civil War general. In 2020, the name was changed to the Thick-billed Longspur.
It was decided that probably the best thing to do is actually, instead of naming them after people, is rethink that and give them better names that are more inclusive.
The American Ornithological Society, which also covers Canada, is holding public consultations to discuss new names set to be changed between 2024 and 2025. So the Cooper's hawk?
It could become the backyard hawk. It could be the long-tailed hawk.
Anyone who would like to take part in the consultations can visit the website of the American Ornithological Society. Sean Leithong, CTV News.
The province is investing in Orange Air Ambulance, providing funding to add 4 aircraft to its fleet.
We recognize the important role Orange plays in providing patients with timely access to care, and today's announcement will ensure better connected care for the region now and into the future.
The health minister made the announcement in Sudbury. It will bring the total number of Orange aircraft to 12 by the year 2026. 2 new crews will also be added. Orange conducts 21,000 air ambulance and critical care land ambulance patient transports per year.
Properly, floss daily, and visit your dentist regularly. All good advice for healthy teeth and gums. But Stats Can says more than a third of Canadians reported they've gone a year without seeing a dentist. Over a third of those surveyed did not have dental insurance, and a quarter of respondents said they avoided going because of the cost.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is being honored by the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles. The former California governor and actor was presented with the inaugural Award of Courage. Schwarzenegger has been a vocal opponent of anti-Semitism. Last year, following a visit to Auschwitz, he posted a lengthy video about the strong impact it had on him while speaking about those who use hate as a scapegoat.
Canadian singer-songwriter Nelly Furtado has been announced as the host for the 2024 Juno Awards. Best known for her hit, I'm Like a Bird, this will be Furtado's second time hosting the annual salute to Canadian music. The 10-time Juno winner will also be performing. The show takes place Sunday, March 24th at the Scotiabank Centre in Halifax.
Stars Tonight is brought to you by Lastman's Bad Boy. Who's better? Nobody.
Coming up, trash talk still on hold. A strike by garbage collectors in the town of Whitby is in its third week as the waste continues to pile up. We break down the messy situation just ahead.
On the next CP24 breakfast,
Connor Emeny is on the final leg of a bid to be the youngest person to compete in Ironman triathlon on 7 continents.
He's on the next CP24 breakfast, up first at 5:30.
This has been crazy. The transparency hasn't been good. Our government has failed us.
Updating our top stories, roughly 24 Canadians managed to leave Gaza today, but calls remain for Ottawa to expedite the evacuation process. At least 400 Canadians remain in the territory.
As a police service, this year we will charge and arrest more people for carjacking and organized auto theft than we ever have.
Peel police say they've broken up a Brampton street gang as part of an investigation dubbed Project Sterling. It focused on a series of violent carjackings and pharmacy robberies. Today, police announced 20 arrests, including 12 young offenders, with more than 100 charges being laid.
We are stronger together, especially if we built the waterfront LRT.
Mayor Olivia Chow took part in a boat tour today promoting the proposed Waterfront East LRT. The city is considering extending LRT rail service to the eastern end of Queens Quay. Tomorrow, council will vote on whether to advance design work on the project.
Remember to keep up to date day and night through our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca, and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
In business news, Canada's telecom regulator says it will allow independent competitors to sell service using the fiber networks of large telecom companies in Ontario and Quebec. BCE says the decision discourages investment and it's pulling back spending in response. BNN Bloomberg's Jacqueline Hansen has more.
One of Canada's biggest telco companies is walking back its plans to expand its high-speed internet. BCE says it will cut spending on high-speed fiber internet access for hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses in rural, suburban, and urban communities. The company blames the CRTC's decision that mandates large telcos share access to their fiber network with independent providers for a set fee. It says it discourages network investment. Analysts say BCE is the telecom company most affected by the decision because it applies only in Ontario and Quebec, BCE's biggest markets. BCE is the parent company of BNN Bloomberg and CTV through its Bell Media division. Well, even as consumers feel the pressure of elevated interest rates and inflation, they are still willing to call an Uber or order food delivery. Uber says delivery jumped 18% in its most recent quarter, and rideshare bookings jumped 30%. Uber has made a big push to get more drivers back on its platform after a shortage led to higher prices and longer wait times. It says it now has a record 6.5 million active drivers. Meanwhile, office sharing company WeWork has filed for bankruptcy protection. In its filing, the company said it has almost $19 billion US in debt. It has entered into a restructuring agreement with creditors. WeWork has also requested the ability to cancel leases in specific locations that are largely non-operational. Let's take a look at some of the closing market numbers for today. The Canadian dollar is trading lower, more than 1/3 cent to 72.65 cents US. West Texas Intermediate oil tumbled more than $3 to about $77 US a barrel. And Western Canadian Select is unchanged at roughly $52 US a barrel. As for stock markets, the TSX declined 168 points to end the day at 19,575.59. That is the latest in business. I'm Jacqueline Hansen of BNN Bloomberg.
Still no end in sight to a strike by workers in the town of Whitby. Garbage collection has been on hold for more than 3 weeks now after hundreds of union members walked off the job. Wages, schedules, and work hours are some of the issues on the table. The town has said it remains committed to achieving a fair and reasonable balance that meets the needs of the workforce and Whitby residents.
I'd like it to be done sooner rather than later, though, that's for sure. You know, I got my green bin still sitting at home wishful, but I'm going to have to bring that in soon. It's getting real full.
This has been my first attempt to drop off all my garbage in the last couple of weeks. So the green bags wasn't too bad here, but I have a carload of other stuff that I wasn't able to get dropped off. So
sitting in line wasting gas, it just really doesn't, it just doesn't make sense when you can go to the dump and bring it in for a couple bucks and get rid of it. Other than that, I do a lot of recycling. And that's my plan, to do more recycling, less garbage.
As a result of the strike, the town has put garbage collection on hold, has closed all Whitby facilities. The Iroquois Community Center is among the designated locations where a temporary garbage drop-off location has been set up. A day to remember. Current and former Maple Leaf players visit Sunnybrook Veterans Center and pay tribute to those who served our country. The heartfelt tradition coming up.
Tonight, a Canadian study reveals the risk of smartphone addiction around the world.
Problematic smartphone use correlates with things like depression, anxiety.
When digital life gets in the way of real life. Later on CTV National News.
And a reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight. And a special hello to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010.
What a game for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The team made a stunning comeback against the Tampa Bay Lightning after trailing 4-1 last night. Austin Matthews scored 2 goals, and Calle Jarnkrok sealed the victory with his second of the game, winning 6-5 with just 45 seconds into overtime. The Leafs have the day off before they host the Ottawa Senators tomorrow night.
But some of them made the most of their time today, paying a visit to some very special fans. CTV's Andrea Case reports.
Here for us. Second World War pilot Doug Cochran turned 105 last week. Among his many accomplishments, Cochran was the former general manager of the Peterborough Petes junior hockey team. Max Domey's dad, Ty Domey, played for the Petes. Today, Max, like his father, is a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Honestly, it's incredible how sharp he really is for 105 years old. It's amazing. So it's just such a privilege to sit here and talk to these people.
Cochran is one of 200 veterans from the Second World War, the Korean War, and the Cold War, living at Sunnybrook Veterans Center.
So I want to thank everybody in attendance today. That has been a great day.
In commemoration of Remembrance Day, Domey, along with Mark Giordano, joined former Toronto Maple Leafs Wendell Clark and Eric Lindros and visited the vets.
Really, it's a special group of people, and we owe a lot to them. So it's important for us as athletes to come out here and recognize that, and really throughout the whole week, and then on Remembrance Day to to recognize it on behalf of our generation.
I'm 99. I'm going to be 100 in 1 month, December 18th.
Ed Marshall was a paratrooper in the Canadian Airborne Regiment.
I've joined up before I was 18. A lot of my buddies did too, and a lot of them didn't come back. So I remember them, and they were all good guys.
You get to spend some valuable time with veterans that have allowed us to live the lives we live today. It's even more of a no-brainer. So super special day, and to share it with obviously Gio and Wendell and Eric was cool too.
Andrea Case, CTV News.
Wonderful. Well, calm and cool weather-wise this hour. There's a chance of wind chill overnight, though, and then you've been using the S word, snow.
Yeah, it's looking like it's coming for at least some areas for tomorrow. Let's begin, though, with a recap of what's in store overnight tonight. Still windy out there. Temperature falling to about -3 for the low. Wind chill -5. A reminder of the freezing rain warning that's in place, along with a special weather statement. You can see how this is just on the outskirts of the GTA, and we could also get some wet snow, some light freezing rain, maybe even some ice pellets at times. Tomorrow's high is only going to be 2 degrees. That is well below seasonal. Here's the 7-day forecast. The sun should return by about Thursday afternoon. Friday's looking like a decent day. The weekend could be below seasonal too, but quiet weather-wise. Nathan and Michelle.
All right. Thanks, Lindsay. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zoraida Allman with our next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.